My name is Beverly Pullen, and all of my works of art are signed B.K. Pullen. I've had a passion for art ever since I've been a little girl, and I do everything from graphite drawings to charcoal drawings, pastel, oil, watercolor, and colored pencil. I chose this piece historically. As I run through the year as an artist, I start trying to pick some historical pieces for a historical show that happens earlier in the year, which, this being a different kind of year, this will be its first debut. This is a church that is located in Peoria, and the reason I chose this church was that it has some history in our families. We have some family members that did attend here early on in its life. I personally did not. So I'm going to start with some of the church history before I get into the drawing itself. Back in 1863, Azarhill Hale came and moved to Peoria. He was the younger brother of William Hale, which was Peoria's first mayor. He had it on his heart to build a church for the community, for young Peoria. And so by 1864, he had purchased a tract of land. It's at the top of the West Bluff in Peoria, which is now the corner of High Street and Main Street. That same year, he passed away. But in his preparation for his heart's desire, he left half of his estate for a building to be built. And 4 years later, Hale Chapel was built, which is the forerunner of this particular building. So that was built in 1864. So 30-some years have elapsed, and by 1900, the congregation had grown that they tore down Hale Chapel and built this current structure. It's a beautiful building. It's in the Romanesque style, neo-classical, kind of a mix of styles there. So getting to the actual drawing, I chose a piece of paper that was Bristol smooth, cream color. And it was smooth, and I thought I will start drawing in graphite in a pencil, art pencil, and if it works out, maybe I'll transfer it to watercolor. I was leaving myself open. Well, as I sat down with this piece of paper, which I had in my stock pile of materials, the pencils just glided on the paper as butter. I was so impressed, and so then I started out with a HB pencil. I went to a TB and a 4B pencil for some of the darker shading. So as I got into it, I didn't really plan to have all this detail, but as I got into it, it was just beautifully, and I was just enamored. So I started with the center structure, and I went this direction. I kind of mapped out the overall size. And so as I went through it, this was a journey, because each piece I completed before moving on. Don't quite do that approach with some of my other mediums but I work on, but with this particular piece, that way I had a sense of how it was going to look. So once the church building itself was completed, then I was decided on how to complete the space above and how to handle the foreground. There are buildings at this particular stage, which is around the 40s and the 50s in Peoria. It's a residential area, and there are businesses, and I thought, well, I don't want houses in here. So I chose just to accent it with trees and background as it would be in. The sky, which I kind of had fun, there was a postcard, and it had it had this, it was reminiscent of this postcard, and it had blocks from the very light to the mid-tone to a little bit darker. And I was really enamored with that because the whole flavor of the picture is the value of the shading. And so I thought, what a way to complement the building to do this. And so that's how I handled the space of the sky. Then the foreground. I love trees. A lot of my landscapes, I will include a tree in it, and I'm enamored. In some of my earlier reference, there was some trees in front of the building, and I thought, well, I don't want to do that because that blocks the church. There was street lamps. I didn't want to do that. That blocks. So I elevated as if this is the hill. You come to a point and then you're going down into where the structure is. So I elevated the street. I made it brick to kind of complement the detail of the church. I put the tree in to just block it in. So that completed all the parts of the image. As I look at it as some symbolism in this, this is Monument of Faith, and of course this was Hale's legacy to provide a building of worship for young Peoria at that time. His legacy lives on. So as part of the symbolism, I put the tree here. It is on higher ground, and my thought is this is the tree of life. Here's the path. The path is going upward. I had the church as lower, not to be the part that you would dwell on a building, because it was the people of the church, the congregation, that made this an offering to the community. And it was there that you had weddings and baptisms and funeral and gatherings. And so it was a building of worship, not to be elevated above what it should be. So this is Monument of Faith, and I thank you, and I'm very pleased and honored to be part of the Members and Friends show here at Galesburg. Thank you.